It is doubtful whether fauna is surprised when its habitat is destroyed by rains and floods. Nevertheless, the ducks, eels and other wildlife that had made the Wainuiomaupu stream banks their homes must have been very puzzled as to why the water rose in the Meringi Valley during the few weeks between June and October 1991. But rise it did, and the turnoff leading to Meringi Station and 5 or 6 houses was completely underwater for a kilometre or more and still rising. The vehicle that had crossed the bridge was one of the last able to do so at this stage of the drama that was to follow. What happened was, the high ground at the eastern side of the stream slipped, due it was said to a recent earthquake. This blocked the stream through the narrow gorge and backed up, forming the lake. Eventually, the weight of the water forced its way through, causing more slips and erosion. While there are no records of similar happenings in this small valley, it is obvious that it has occurred before, being evidenced by the many small stones and boulders half buried in the papa through which the stream flows and visible downstream below the gorge. During the time the water was building up into a lake, much discussion was taking place between local farmers and the Wellington Regional Council officers. Towards the head of the stream stood a long-planned forestry scheme just coming to fruition, with roads built to take logging trucks. The work soon came to a halt, however, and the owners and contractors wanted immediate action to clear the gorge and have the roads passable again. On the other hand, some residents wished it to remain a lake and the council to stabilise the sides and outflow. In fact, a jet boat had already been brought into use to ferry residents and stores across. The council thought it better to make a new cut, bypassing the gorge, and so to avoid the slips which would dam the river again. Ultimately, that is what was done. Meanwhile, the winter rains continued and came down in torrents, the increased flow undermining the sides of the gorge still further. Now only the tops of the bridge rails were visible. After days of continual rain, the story of the lake's sudden rise had got around, and some locals took the rather risky path along the slippery slopes to observe the rushing torrent and increasingly larger slips. Downstream of the gorge, the water was a swift, flowing gruel of muddy water. Regional council workers in the gorge took still photographs of the slips for reference purposes. Mudslips, which had only been wheelbarrow size, were now large enough to fill a 7-ton truck. The workmen and engineers discussed the situation and decided to quit until the rain stopped. From time to time the wind dropped and the lake took on a tranquil form as though to enhance the scene for photographers. Even on this new bypass, water was causing problems as seepage was coming through and causing landslips. The rain did stop for a while, and the lone bewildered sheep contemplated the muddy reflections. Drainage from the hilltops was considerable, so that for a while the rain ceasing made little difference. The regional county may be pondering over the alleged 160,000 said to have already been allocated to the correction work, which appeared to be quickly undone by the heavy rains and consequent flooding. For many hours the bulldozer carried on, and quite soon a vehicle was able to follow it around the newly formed track. By now a compressor had been suitably placed to enable holes to be bored for explosive charges. A rowboat was used to transfer tools and equipment to the selected site and is shown returning after one such trip. At the slip, the water had slowed to a trickle, and this local resident was testing the depth with a stick and found it to be only about 30 centimetres. The site was cleared of trucks and people, and the charge exploded. Although not allowed near the blasting site, the camera did not reveal a positive result. One of the workmen is shown walking towards the blast holes, looking for a sign of more water breaking through. The parper had responded by rising a metre or so and then settled back. It was then decided to bypass the gorge by digging out a long cutting, thereby draining the newly formed lake. Earth-moving equipment and trucks worked on the site for 2 or 3 days. There was the inevitable stuck track, but that was soon back to work again. Work was progressing nicely, but however, before it was finished, heavy rain again stopped work. Paul Henry of Today FM, the radio station in Cardigan, made an on-site inspection. Mr. Eugene Lowe, one of the people whose home had been isolated, used his jet boat to ferry a people across. Today he had to take his wife, Mrs. Margaret Lowe, a nurse, who wanted to get to work at the Masson Hospital. After getting across from the other side of the lake, Mrs. Lowe would then walk up to Glendonald Station and take her car from there, where it had been left. Mr. Lowe, the boat owner, took the camera crew to view the lake. Its extent can be seen and depth gauged by the trees. local farmers had worried looks as they watched the raging torrent rage through the gorge and noticed that the slips were coated with green grass. This meant that the slip was still coming down from the side of the hill.
Yeah.
The road where the Spirit King loads stores, a dozen cans of beer and 1 or 2 passengers, including the school bus driver Les Warrington, who is also the Transport Warrappa depot manager. Les had continued the daily run with stores, mail and shopping orders throughout the flooding. The mail must get through, eh, Les?
Yeah, it's got to go through.
Hold that. Another one. You can just hold that up onto your knees.
Oh, this one here.
Yeah, how strong is it?
We'll just go around the side of it. Just try and step over that. Wait there. Hold it. Jump over and just hold.
The camera crew returning home found that after crossing Glendonald Bridge, the road to the Bideford church was flooded, indicating that the stream flow was increasing. The camera crew had hardly arrived home when the phone rang, and it was Les Warrington telling them that the lake had gone. Racing back to the lake, taking care at the Glendonald Bridge, a scene of utter devastation was going to be before them. This is the story that Les told over the phone. He had unloaded the jet boat on the far shore and had taken the first load of parcels to the Transport Warrappa depot. It took 40 minutes by the time he returned for the remaining parcels, and rounding the bend to the lake, he stopped and stared. The lake had gone. Somebody had pulled the plug. He was dreaming. He couldn't believe his eyes. There before him was a huge muddy expanse dotted with dead trees, the bridge rails, and far across, the road to the town. Trees were watermarked, some up to 4 meters, but no sign of life. Gone were the visions of water sports. The stream was back to a trickle. The jet boat was high and dry.
could actually, once it started going, you could actually see it drawing the driftwood from up all the gullies.
So there's a big current all the way up.
Oh, well, yeah.
What about that car that got stranded? Came up to the wheels. Yeah, a piece of driftwood that got stuck against the wheel of the car, and that's as far as it went. So the lake was still rising when you got in?
Oh, it's very hard to tell. I don't.
Not only was it front page news on the Wairarapa Times Age, Television One was also interested, by the courtesy of Holloway Videos.
One Network News with Richard Long and Judy Bailey.
A rogue lake and its mysterious disappearance. Nature put it there, practically cutting off a tiny Wairarapa town.
Well, after months of struggling with their predicament, Bideford was just coming round to the idea of having a lake for the summer. But as Chris Wright reports, nature struck again.
For the last few months, unsuspecting drivers using Maoringi Road in the northern Wairarapa have been in for a surprise. The road ends in a lake, since heavy rains and an earthquake in July sent tons of debris into the Wainui Mapu Gorge, blocking the river. As the lake built up, a road was built around it until it too got flooded. So they took to jet boats to get to work.
The mail must get through, eh, Les?
Yeah, it's got to go through.
For the postie, fast post meant getting a little wet to ensure the mail got through. That was till yesterday. 55 millimetres of rain sent the lake levels high up. The Wairarapa started falling into the lake and something had to give. This morning the lake was no more, Maoringi Road is back on the map and the jet boats back on wheels. Chris Wright, One Network News.
Above the narrow gorge, two house-sized boulders could be seen somewhat precariously perched. They look like sentinels. One has since fell and broke in half. The other still stands waiting for the rains. The slip as it was, it continued to slip and had slowed the stream to a trickle. The new outlet is now being completed. Grass was growing again and the trees thought to be dead were also sprouting leaves. The council has now installed a new 1.5 metre culvert in which was now flowing 40 centimetres of water. The cutting is quite long, as can be seen by the person gathering shells and fossils at the end of the cut. These shells and fossils were unearthed at about a depth of 10 metres. They include round hollowed bones, mussel-looking shells and ordinary seashells which can be seen on any beach. The slip face is half covered with loose rubble, which no doubt could well wash away during the next heavy rains. Downstream, the grass grows again, while several rocks can be seen washed down by the force of the draining lake. Now new life grows in where the lake was, and time will heal everything, but as yet it is still a bit desolate.